Joining me live on Google Hangouts is BoneGolem. He's the creator of Deepfreeze.it. BoneGolem, how are you doing today?
Normal.
Normal. Yeah, we're at different timelines. You're in Italy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, what?
Nice sunny day.
Yeah, same here. We're here in Florida. First question, and what side of Gamergate do you fall on?
Well, I do my thing mostly. For me, Gamergate has always been what I brought into it, not what has been. You mean as in I am a supporter or am I against it? No, I am a supporter. Sorry, I was
Okay.
making it more
And
complicated.
and what would you define Gamergate as?
Well, Gamergate is a consumer revolt that has been sprung after several after years of bad game journalism and the refusal on game journalism's part to address these problems and the attack on their audience rather than the admission of not the folding of the not the the refusal even to acknowledge the fact that there were problems by the gaming press. That has been springing a consumer revolt that okay, let me rephrase that. Since we can edit that, and I got a bit tongue-tied. Gaming journalism has always been known to be corrupt. It has been known to be corrupt for years. 10 years ago, it was already a stereotype that game journalism was corrupt, but there was an acceleration until in recent years, since 2012 or so, with Doritos Gate, the Entitled Gamers debacle, and several other things. In Gamergate is what happened when even more issues popped out in August 2014, and game journalists saw this fire starting, and instead of taking a small step back that would have been enough to quell it, they decided to fuel it with everything they had. They made it escalate. They not refused to address the problem. They refused to admit there was a problem, and they slander the people who try to who claim there was a problem. So they managed to gain overnight, basically 10 times the enmity, and to escalate something that could have been solved relatively quickly into a consumer revolt that has been lasting 10 months and has been wreaking havoc for a very long time. That's the gist of it.
Why do you think there was a massive failure in video game journalism? What do you think caused most of this?
Well, the problem has been, is in my opinion, twofold. The first part of the problem is the fact that game journalism is working on a very difficult situation, on a very thin line. They are a strange industry that basically has gaming companies as customers, but game fans as consumers. They are selling people. They work on very low profit margins. They have to balance very difficultly their reporting, and they have a lot of pressure from publishers. That has been bringing to a pretty difficult situation that has often escalated. The Doritos Gate is, in my opinion, a pretty good example of those problems, if you are familiar with that scandal.
Right. Yes.
And that the other side is the fact that well, again, journalists, in my opinion, are growing. Have started to. Partially, this is a problem still tied to the financial reasons, that to the fact that they have low profit margins and so on. But they have been going into sensationalist territory much more often. It's much easier to get clicks to get by exploiting by exploiting things. I apologize.
No,
This is why I shouldn't talk in public. On the other side, there has been this politicization of journalism, of gaming journalism, that has been politicization in and by itself is not something terrible, but when it drowns everything else, it's not good. If I have a different opinion than you on something, that's fine. If I say you are a monster for having a different opinion than me, that becomes a problem. These journalists have been. What really surprised me in Gamergate is the fact that at a lot of points in it, there were extremely simple solutions to problems, and they were, and those were never accepted. Journalists kept escalating problems. Journalists refused to do simple things like adding a disclosure. I don't know where I'm going with this. I think I had a good idea. It was clear in my mind.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Sorry.
No, it's okay. This also goes into, because there's been another side of Gamergate, which has been that this is a hate group, or these are people who are attacking female game developers. Why is that being mentioned heavily? What is, if we look at the other side of what Gamergate is for other people, why do people keep assuming that? If there is a push for gaming ethics in gaming journalism.
Well, the reason for this is, first of all, I would like to clarify that this is something that you'll see less and less these days. If you go look at extremely at game sites that are extremely against Gamergate, such as, for example, Engadget, the joystick's sister site. I think it's called Engadget. They haven't been reporting on Gamergate for 3 months. The same thing can be said for Eurogamer. Eurogamer made a couple of pieces in October and then stopped all of a sudden. Speaking about Gamergate in general, they were again keeping a Gamergate's harassment angle. So this is actually something that I have looked into that. I have too easy to say as a Gamergate supporter. It's simply not true. That is a lie. But I did not say it is a lie that Gamergate is about harassment. I went and looked. The harassment episodes that you can find that target Gamergate supporters, so that are frequent, are very heavy. There's doxing. They are heavily proven. Whereas there's extremely little evidence of harassment perpetrated by Gamergate supporters. There have been cases of harassment, but they are all coming from anonymous sources. Those sources that are not anonymous are traceable to third-party groups that are, such as the Bill Wagoner crew that targeted both pro and anti-Gamergate people, such as the 8chan Baphomet board that also targeted Gamergate people. And there was another one, but I don't remember it anymore. There's what the episodes have been often paraded around of harassment by Gamergate fail once you give them more than a surface glance. For instance, the actress Felicia Day, the actress that was doxxed.
Right.
Felicia Day is one of the most often paraded people that get often talked about when discussing harassment. Felicia Day expressed their fear at Gamergate, said that the consumer moved, that she was afraid that of being doxxed, was afraid of. The day after she said that, almost immediately, there was a doxing of her, and people said look, she spoke about Gamergate and she got doxxed immediately after.
So a lot of people
They-
see
they-
that
they-
as
yes, but
a
they
bandwagon.
are omitting something very important, in my opinion. That is the fact that the doxing that took place was from a commenter on a feed that said something to the effect, okay, well, doxing is not something you have to be careful about what you describe as doxing. For instance, I can Google her address right away. Here, this is an example. This guy was the doxing, and also the doxing data he had was not correct. It was the contact info for a firm that was representing they. So you read to Kotaku. There's an article that basically that does not explain these things and basically implies that Gamergate is responsible. Not only there is no proof, the circumstances make it this doxing was never factually never featured factually correct data, and the person perpetrating it was a random guy on the feed. It was not a Gamergate supporter. You understand what I mean? All the episodes that you look at, I have some examples on Deepfreeze on the.
Yeah, I was gonna ask because you actually have made it clear on there's evidence on Deepfreeze.it that there have even been gaming journalists who've promoted or advocated doxing.
Yes, there are a couple of times that this has happened. This is something that I believe is a good sign of this hubris, of this strange behavior that they had, that was around in game journalism. I don't believe something like that will fly today. In fact, I do believe that all the examples that of doxing that are off the top of my head, Sessler and like Alexander, I believe, were from much before Gamergate. It was not. That was that was something very strange to discover and to file. It's a strange thing, doxing today. It's a new frontier of the. It's not a crime that exists. It's not a crime actually, but it's not something that existed a few years back.
Right.
There's still on one hand.
It's very strange to define doxing because what I identify doxing as is someone getting information about someone's personal address, personal mailing address, phone number, and things like that, and sending it out for people to harass with it. But if it's public information,
exactly, that's the information. The Kotaku in Action board on Reddit has been forbidden from posting the pages of the pages offering contact information for companies because that constitutes doxing, according to Reddit.
Right, and
that's a pretty big stretch, effectively.
Yeah, but I mean, Reddit's having its own issues right now, unfortunately, especially with the shutting down of a few boards as well.
And not a very. All people are focusing on is the Fat8 subreddit, but it's actually the most interesting band that was on Reddit. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Is the I think the name was Neofag. They banned a few subreddits, but the only subreddit that they named was Fat People Hate. Because so people say this was a hate group. They actually banned a subreddit that was dedicated to making fun of the NeoGAF forum.
Right.
And they banned also another subreddit dedicated to. Huh?
Because they had a name in the title, that's why they probably shut it down. And this leads to
shut down another subreddit called NeoGAF in Action. That was the exact same thing, also about NeoGAF, and was not saying that it was for ban evasion, although the subreddit existed months before this crunching down. So it's if it is a mistake, I'm assuming it's possible, but it's very hard not to see it as an act of censoring dissent, in my opinion.
I'm just astounded that there's levels of censorship happening, especially even in video gaming journalism. This kind of leads to that to me was very surprising, but this leads to my next question is what of all the information you've compiled for Deepfreeze.it and everything involving Gamergate, what is the most surprising thing you've learned?
Well, mostly it's the things that I have gathered before starting the freeze with my infographics. The thing that actually fascinated me when I was doing my infographics is the fact that all this information tended to go on the same people. That's what actually made me. I did not make the freeze for people who have one emblem. I made it because there's people who have 17, who have 10, who have very large. Because, for instance, everybody is, as you certainly know with your knowledge of Gamergate, Gamergate started with the spark that lit the already very difficult situation that was in gaming journalism was a conflict of interest. One journalist covering a small-time indie developer that he was in a both friendly and then romantic relationship with.
Right.
But what is surprising is that this developer has been involved into at least 4 more conflicts of interest. So there are at least 4 other journalists that have been found by Twitter footprints, by Patreon support, to be covering this person for without disclosure, while being friends or while being in financial ties with this person, etc. This is not an isolated thing. This happens continuously. Some other people we have found 3 ties instead of 5. Some other people we found 4. Some other people we found just a couple. But this keeps popping out. It's always the same names. When I think of the people I know, of the people that I wouldn't be able to cover on a journalistic site without disclosure, the first probably 30 names or so are people that have 0 public footprint. People who have they're not people who have worked together with me that you can see on the LinkedIn's. They have they've worked together with me. They're not people who have the people that I have conversated with privately. The people who have conversated with in private chat. There's no Twitter footprint. There's no Facebook footprint. There's nothing. And just having those things, we managed to dig this much. It's my impression that there is a lot more underneath. There's when Nathan Grayson wrote an article recently about coincidentally, Steam sales. There are refunds now. People rejoiced everywhere when refunds were announced. There's one journalist said there were problems with that. It was Nathan Grayson. So he's swimming against the current. He's quoting 2 examples of developers that are against refunds. One of these developers is one Nina Freeman, a friend of his, readily discovered. He already had an emblem on Deepfreeze for having a personal relationship with her while covering her without disclosing it. And the other one, Nina Freeman has 2 more people who have a similar relationship with her. So she's covered by 2 people who have a personal relationship with her. And the other developer that Grayson has discussed is one Cameron Kalzelman, who's mostly a journalist, works for and critic, works on critical distance, so it's which is more of an aggregator. And while there are no ties with Grayson, that have been discovered this far, he has been found 3 times to cover people who was being financially supported by on Patreon. So it's always the same people. Every time somebody takes a step, you keep finding these things. This is what surprised me: the fact that it is such a diffused thing. It is such a developed web. You're looking off screen and oh god, how boring!
No. We had a camera check because something happened, but it was a quick fix. I just had to motion to do something. But
I apologize. I cannot track them.
No, it's perfectly fine. What I'm so astounded by is why can't these journalists just disclose this information? This would have completely prevented so many different problems. And if they disclosed this information, people would have been like, okay, well, that makes sense. Maybe that's why they use that person. And I've been I've been a journalist for 9 years, and it's no secret that sometimes you have to use your friends as sources for information. It's no secret that sometimes you have a friend who's going to give you information. But the first thing they teach you when you study journalism in college or in high school is let your editor know, and your editor would tell you if you should not use that source or give that source to someone else so they can vet that source. Why is this so difficult in gaming journalism?
Well, I have a theory personally that the key point in Gamergate is not so much the response by Stephen Totilo, editor-in-chief of Kotaku, to the issue in to the gray zone conflict of interest that started the controversy.
Right.
If you're familiar with what happened, Totilo basically first released a piece saying that a brief piece saying that he was aware of he had been made aware of the problem and he was going to address it. Then he made one other post and explained that it was not an actual issue, that he had examined it thoroughly, and it was not an issue because go read the piece because it seems like I'm putting words in his mouth. That's what he said. The article in question, there was one article on Kotaku, two on Rock Paper Shotgun, so only one was in his jurisdiction. The article in question was not a review, and the romantic relationship between Queen and Grayson started right after the article. So before the article, they were cool. Although they were friends, it was already known. But at that point, in my opinion, the issue has changed. Right after the Grayson incident, more cases, more conflicts of interest surfaced regarding Patricia Hernandez. Totilo immediately addressed these, added disclosure to the articles. In my opinion, it was Hernandez who was the one who added the disclosure. But by the way, anyway, Kotaku added the disclosures immediately for these articles, for the second conflict of interest that popped out. And Totilo immediately went into a stream with Total Biscuit, discussed this issue, said some things that you may agree with, said some things that you may not agree with, but he addressed the thing. If he had replied like that to the original issue would have been solved, in my opinion. The problem is that just after Totilo made this statement, or around the time when Totilo made his original statement on the Grayson thing, there were several acts of censorship, most notably the infamous thread on Reddit that got 25,000 comments deleted, and the other case. So people started to make so the issue escalated. At this point, after that point, in my opinion, the issue was not so much of disclosure, of adding disclosure. The issue was the fact that if they had disclosure at that point, if they would have had to admit that they had been skirting the issue. If right now Kotaku were to sanction Grayson for it would have to admit right now that for 10 months we have been right and they have been wrong. That would be from the PR point of view a suicide. So they are forced to keep a different position. For the other conflicts of interest that have been surfacing this far, the ones that have been there since before Gamergate, I think it's more about hubris than anything. It's they thought they were untouchable. They were untouchable. To an extent, they have been for a long time. Some journalists, because let's keep in mind that some journalists sometimes, because saying everybody is bad because some people are bad is not something that is fair or correct to say. But the issue probably the issue seems to be that they did not think there was a problem. There's extremely few people in game journalism that are actual journalists. There's off the top of my head, the only people who have a journalism degree that I can think of are Totilo and Patrick Klepek, also Kotaku. They're mostly amateurs that were talking about video games and ended in there. Much like me when I work on Deepfreeze, they they did not know the profession very at the start. A lot of things about that seem obvious are not so easy for somebody who does not have a formation in that field. The surprise is that they took this angle that this where it was very hard for them to accept criticism, very hard, so this issue stayed around.
All right.
And I apologize because every time you make a question, I open the floodgates and start.
No, it's perfect. It's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine.
There's a reason I prefer written work, because so I have time to cut out all the things.
No, it's perfectly fine. It's just you did bring up a surprising point, which is we're seeing a lot of people who are not trained in journalism, who are not journalists by career or by trade, practicing so many levels of due diligence. If they need to make a correction, they address that they made a correction. They try to take a neutral stance. They try to disclose as much information as possible. It's just surprising that you have people who are not trained in journalism doing that. Last question.
You have to keep, if I may, you have to keep in mind that even people who have that are famous for doing a bad job at something normally do a good job 9 times out of 10.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that even if you go and look at the most terrible journalists that are around in the gaming scene, you'll find them a lot of times refusing to do something, taking caution before doing something, being proper at the job. And even if you go and look at the worst sites, you probably go and find a couple of people who are doing things properly. The issue is that their issues are going to pop out. The fact is that nobody has been addressing them for a long time, and given that when somebody tried to address them, we were called out for without any proof for a lot of horrible things. I think that is a good explanation of why these people have had so few corrections. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. This is actually our last question. As you know, there is in America we have a group called the Society of Professional Journalists, SPJ. They have an event coming up called Airplay, and many people on both sides of Gamergate think that this is going to fully define what Gamergate is, and at the same time possibly put a semi-formal end to Gamergate in some capacity. Do you think that'll happen? And if Gamergate does end, what do you think is going to happen afterwards in gaming journalism?
Well, I'm sorry. Okay. The SPJ is a very important thing. This is mostly because the reason if you go look at the past 10 months, Gamergate has never been considered by game journalists as that's what is strange. If you go look at politicians, even extreme enemies, they are people with different opinions. They behave as people with different opinions. If you go look at Gamergate, you see a war. You see, that's why my article on Gamergate is called "The Monster to Silence," because there's never been any form of accepted dialogue. If you go look at the times when there were debates between the two people, one pro Gamergate, one against Gamergate, you can count them on the end of a blind butcher. There's back when Totilo did his stream with Total Biscuit. Total Biscuit has made a joke at the start of the stream. It was September or October, so very early in the controversy. He said that this is the table for the dialogue. It's very dusty, though, because it has never been used before. The funny thing is that it has never been used since. I can't think of a time when a journalist actually sat down in front of a Gamergate supporter and discussed with him. He said, "You are wrong." He said, "I don't agree with what you're saying." There was never something like that. The airplay is basically the same thing as the Deepfreeze has done in a way. Is forcing them to participate in a dialogue. If they want to tell me that there's something wrong on the Deepfreeze, they are forced to comment on it. They are forced to come to me and tell me this is not correct. This is at SPJ they are also forced to start a discussion. This is going to be a very good thing. I'm sorry. Back to your question, because as always I open 1 million parentheses. Well, the Gamergate is going to be. I don't think Gamergate is going to end. I think Gamergate, if anything, is going to change. Gamergate actually is an hashtag under which people. So the people who are now participating in Gamergate are not going to stop. There is still a lot to do. My personal dream would be of a future with a more media accountability, a future where I think that the real thing, the real important thing about Gamergate is the fact that is the technical status of it. If Gamergate had taken place in the 90s, it would have stopped. It would have been stopped dead in its track by the fact that it got censored on the media. Today we have a lot of stuff that we didn't have back in the day. We have social media. We managed to use Twitter when we managed to migrate on a different site when 4chan banned discussion. We managed to use Reddit, despite the fact that it is banned on most subreddit. We managed to use to create a subreddit and use it as a rallying point. We have the media are going back into their influence is shrinking. I have been living not in about real issues with media. I have been living in a country that has been ruled by for basically what accounts to 20 years by somebody who owns half the television channels, the 2 or 3 largest, and controls the ones that he does not own. Has been controlling for most of the time those he did not own, as owns most the largest publishing houses in my country, owns and has managed to basically rule the country unopposed, despite the fact that he had multiple trials ongoing for everything from financial problems to even sexual relationship with a minor. That was what eventually brought him down, but it took a very long time. Suspected ties with mafia, everything. And this has been enabled by journalists, by journalists who have been on his side, by journalists who allowed people to discuss as if who did not discuss the things that were the things that were being contested on him, that erased these errors. When there was an issue, when he said something horrible, when he did something horrible, people were. You never got the news. You never got the facts. You got an exposition by a politician that said one thing, and another politician who said the opposite. So it looked like an issue with sides when it was. People were not given the data to form their own opinion. People were destroyed, and I want the future to be accountable. I want the future Americans too have had issues with presidents telling them things that were not true. I've been marching with a peace flag back in the day, more than 10 years back, when there was an invasion war that turned out to be on a country that was not involved with certain terrorist attacks, if you remember.
Right.
There are and there will be attempts in your country as well to hide or to cover things that are against the people, such as the NSA surveillance, such as the we need somebody to report on this. We need somebody to cover us, to do what the press is supposed to do. And I think adding accountability to them is what is, for me, because Gamergate has no leader, nobody has an opinion. For me, it will be that. And that is why I have been making what I've been making rather than something else.
Okay, and thank you so much for that work. We've actually been, full disclosure, which we've already disclosed this in the past, Deepfreeze.it is actually one source of information we've been using to backtrack a lot of this information in our reports, in our writings, and it's a very nicely compiled source of information that hopefully we can see being used not just in video gaming journalism, but also in all aspects of journalism, even in the political spectrum as well. And
to do that. The only problem that I have with that right now is the fact that I am not familiar with American politics, American society, you understand the thing. If you see an article about Witcher 3, I am at least reasonably familiar with I can tell you, I could speak about the Witcher 3 for a few minutes, explain to you in detail what it is. If I see an article saying, John Smith has lied to Congress, first thing you have to explain to me who John Smith is, what Congress is, because I don't know exactly what it is. You get the idea. I wouldn't be able. I don't have the power to cover it, but it would be extremely important.
Okay, well, here's hoping later on down the road that could be used for that in some capacity. And thank you very much for doing this.
Thanks to you, and I apologize again for rambling and for going off topic and everything.
It's fine. Thank you very much. We would like to disclose that we've used Deepfreeze.it as a reference for some of our articles. You can visit their website at Deepfreeze.it. Thank you for watching Game Journalism Network. Goodbye.